Hello, and welcome to another edition of NCAPDA's Lived Experience Interviews that are serving to both educate and inspire our viewers to take action to combat our nation's overdose epidemic. I'm April Rivero, the Executive Director of the National Coalition Against Prescription Drug Abuse. That was founded back in 2010, just a few months after I lost my 21-year-old son, Joey, to an accidental overdose of prescription drugs that he had mixed with alcohol while out with his friends one evening. Today, two of our NCAPDA interns, Ankita and Manu, will be interviewing Zack, who was one of Joey's best friends. Zack is going to share how he's been personally impacted by choices his friends made, and he'll also share his perspective on what action youth and parents can take to avoid the losses he's experienced. So thank you so much, Zack, for being with us today. It's good to see you again, and for your willingness to share your lived experience with us today. So Ankita and Manu, I'm going to turn the interview over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, April. And thank you, Zach, for allowing us to interview you and using your story as a way to help us spread awareness about this topic. So diving right in, you've been out of high school and college for a few years now. Did you see any of your friends or peers misusing or using any prescription drugs while you were in school?
No, not really. When I was in high school, I graduated in 2006, so that wasn't really something that was talked about. So it wasn't, anything that was prevalent or anything that I saw. But as I got into college, certain things had already happened in my life, and I became more aware of these prescription drugs. So, yeah, there were certain instances where I was aware it was happening.
Mm-hmm. So how have you been personally impacted by your friends' misuse of prescription drugs? And what was your reaction when such things happened?
Um, Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any other word than devastating. I remember the night I got the phone call that Joey had passed away, and I literally, it was heartbreaking. There's no explaining that feeling. It was something really terrible. I was scared. I was, really unsure because, like I said, this wasn't something that was. I had no idea something like this existed, let alone that somebody I was close with even partook in this type of thing. So that was really earth shattering for me.
Mhm. So, what has happened to your other friends or classmates who have struggled with these types of prescription drug misuse?
Um, Unfortunately, they really all have the same outcome. It's really one of two things, and it's really straightforward. Most people who get involved with these drugs, you either die, and that's the first option. And the second option that I've seen is that these people continue a life of addiction, whether they get healthy for a little bit and go back down. It's a continuous thing that not only breaks them, breaks their family, and it's a really sad thing to see. But it's really only two options, and that's death or continuing a downward spiral.
Did you know any of your friends were misusing or anything like that?
Um, Again, in the beginning, when Joey passed away, I had no idea what these prescription drugs were. I didn't notice it because I wasn't aware. As I got older, after Joey passed away, there were certain, friends that started to kind of exhibit some signs. Again, being from the Tri-Valley and being from San Ramon, we all came from really good families, so it wasn't something that I expected to really see. Um, but yeah, a lot of them just kind of started to, you know, kind of distance themselves. And then as it really got worse, you would see certain things that would happen. And again, just going down that same path that, I guess Joey was kind of headed to. And it's the same thing. It's death, it's jail, and it's just continuing to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So through these experiences and knowing how addictive and dangerous prescription drugs can be, what advice do you have for youth who have friends who may be in trouble with prescription drugs or other misuse?
I think today, the youth, especially you guys your age, are really good at staying in contact, whether it's on social media or, text messaging or calling. And that's a step. But I think really, if it's someone you care about, it's someone you love, you really want to be there for them in the physical sense. Talk to them, go to their house, just, be in communication with them, whether you have a feeling that they're doing these things, or if you 100% no. Get their parents involved, have that conversation with them, because I think the quicker you get that conversation started and just being in front of them and letting them know that you're there for them, it gives you a head start and it helps because, you know, a lot of these people, unfortunately, you know, minus their addiction, might have started doing these pills or prescription drugs for something that they're trying to hide or, you know, they don't want people to know about. So really letting them know that you're there for them and in both, you know, the physical sense and checking up on them when you can, I think that'd be a huge plus.
And for those parents and their youth and friends around them, what have you learned about prescription drug safety that you want them to know to help prevent use if they could?
I mean, at the end of the day, these drugs are a scary thing. It's literally a death sentence, like I said. I mean, you don't have much of a choice if you even do this one time. So I think just, you know, knowing that and understanding that there is a use for these drugs, you know, in a medical sense, where if you have a sports injury or things like that, but really just being able to stay on top of that and understand the difference between, you know, just using the medicine as it's intended to abuse. And that's a very fine line. So for the parents, you know, really to keep an eye on that, and, you know, understand that parents are easily at risk for this as well. You know, the situation that happened with Joey, where it was a combination of alcohol and prescription drugs, it's very easily to happen to, you know, an adult who sips, you know, a couple glasses of wine and takes Xanax for their anxiety or some other opioid. So just kind of that knowledge that it's just not a kid thing. It's not just a youth thing. It's not a middle-aged thing. It can really happen to anybody. And I think that shows the power of these drugs.
Mm-hmm. How do you think the stigma associated with substance abuse disorder and overdose contributes to the growing issue?
You know, there is a negative stigma around it. You know, nobody wants to ask for help. I think we're really doing a good job in the work you guys are doing, and April's doing at NCAPDA. I mean, that helps, and that's the biggest thing. You want to let people know that they're not alone, and you want to let people know that it's okay to ask for help. And I think, you know, myself being a 31-year-old man, you know, I was always told to, you know, you just kind of bottle it up and you work through it. Now at the younger generations, you know, we're learning to really express how we feel. And I think that's okay to ask for help, and it's not a sign of weakness, and it's not a sign of that you can't do it on your own. Sometimes it just takes more than one person. But I will say that with, you know, prescription drugs specifically, you can ask for all the help in the world, but you yourself, the person who's the addict, needs to be ready to make that jump. You know, I've seen friends that have gotten a lot of chances at help, and they just weren't ready to do it themselves. And unfortunately, it just continues down that spiral.
Mhm. So going off that, what do you think youth and adults, like, what ways can they help break down this stigma and ask for help?
Yeah, I mean, just again, having that conversation is a big starting point. You know, having that conversation with your kids, having your kids have that open dialogue back, that's the best starting point. You know, to understand that these drugs, again, do have an intended purpose, but again, can be very, very easily misused and abused. So continuing those conversations, from a parent standpoint, you know, locking up the medicine. You know, making sure if your child does have some sort of surgery where they do require some of these medications, that you're monitoring it, that you're taking control of it, and not letting them just have free access to it.
Based off of your experiences and your advice, what have you personally done to help make a difference with the prescription drug epidemic?
You know, personally, again, I don't ever feel that I'm saving the world or doing anything of that nature. Again, I'm very fortunate that I never had drug issues and never went down that road. So I'm not speaking from somebody who's had addiction issues, but more or less just speaking from a friend who's seen a couple of my friends go down a really bad path, and some of which have died. And just being a person to explain the things that I've, you know, humanly feel. So I think that's my biggest, you know, contribution, is just having conversations with young adults like yourself, you know, not sugarcoating it, having a real conversation about real life things, and not scaring you, but just understanding that, like, this is a real situation that I think you need to be aware of. And again, like I said, I was never feeling like I was saving the world, but years later, after going and talking to a lot of high school kids and middle school students as well, I've had several of them come up to me years later, and some of which are my friends now that remember the conversation that we had, or remember me talking at their school, and just letting them know, they're letting me know that that story impacted them, and they're always thankful for that, and that they remember it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and interviewing with us today, the NCAPDA as well as the interns. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you guys, working with April, and it's a good thing. And I'm amazed that you guys are doing this at such a young age. And I mean, it sounds really corny, but you guys are really going to change the world. And having conversations like this helps so much. So thank you guys for having me, April. I appreciate it, and I will talk to you guys soon.
Well, and thank you, Zach, for me again, and we will have more opportunities for you to help down paths. So I appreciate everything you've done for NCAPDA through the years, and especially this interview. Thank you so much.
Not a problem, guys. Talk to you soon.
Have a good day.
Here are a few resources we hope you'll check out. If you or a friend or family member has concerns related to substance misuse, suicide, or mental health issues of any kind, contact the anonymous 24/7 hotline at 800-662-HELP. Visit NIDA for Teens website, where fact-based information is provided that can empower you to make informed decisions about using and misusing drugs of all types. Watch the What is Naloxone video to learn more about opioids, how they affect the brain, and how an opioid overdose can be overturned with naloxone. Thank you for watching this interview. We hope you have found it helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to NCAPDA at either 925-480-7723 or info@ncapda.org. You can also join us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn more. Thank you.